Welcome to the Power Factor Show. Episode 140. Sponsored by Rainier Ballistics, Hodgdon Powders, and JPL Precision.
Welcome back to Power Factor. I'm Rick.
I'm Larry.
And tonight we have a special guest, sometimes host or guest of the GunDudes show,
right.
Steve Koski. Say hi, Steve.
Hello, everybody.
Hey. So Steve was in town for the Washington State IDPA Championship last weekend. Was that your first trip to Washington?
Well, I grew up in Portland, been to Washington a lot.
Okay, but first time at the match.
Yeah, I lived in Walla Walla for 4 years, if you heard that.
Walla, that's right down the road. I grew up in Gig Harbor. So Walla Walla's, I mean, it's a little bit away, but still I think that's closer than Renton is. So.
But it's our first time venturing all the way to the left coast for a state IDPA match.
Okay. Now, when you'd made some comments on the GunDudes show about a perception or what you expected to find, were your worst fears realized, or how did it work out?
Well, I found probably the best IDPA officiating I've ever seen. I mean, people actually understand the rule book. They follow the rule book.
Right.
I was frankly kind of blown away by it. I knew you guys understood the rule of cover and called cover.
Right.
But it was just implemented so cleanly across the board. I was stunned, and I picked up 4 procedurals. So.
Okay. Wow. Deserved, right?
Oh yes, everyone.
Well, we had a little discussion on that one. The low, not low cover, but not low in the sense that you had to put your knee down, but low in that it was about waist high.
You had to squat a little bit.
Yeah, in the motorcycle stage.
Apparently.
Yeah. And it was interesting. I watched a bunch of people shoot it, but then I also noticed at the end of the match there were about 10 bullet strikes on the top of the table. So certainly people were getting plenty low.
Some people were definitely getting low.
Yeah, they're definitely getting low.
Most of them had been signed too. That was cool.
Yeah. Little. Yeah, we weren't sure. I mean, it was interesting when I shot that stage that I was aware that I had to really get down. I mean, some people, they feel like, okay, I can't stand straight up, but they just sort of like shrug a little bit and they figure that's good enough. But the table really is pretty close to waist high. I mean, you really had to get down.
Yeah.
So what
that was a fun stage.
Yeah,
they were all pretty fun, weren't they?
They're good, a great variety of stages. You actually scared me with your pre-match show saying, well, you know, I designed the whole match for marksman shooters. And I was like, oh, God, here we go.
Right. And that was a little bit of it. That was a bit of an exaggeration.
I'll be down like 12 points for the whole match or something. But no, some of them were very, very fast, fleeting targets.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people just didn't hit them at all.
Yeah. I mean, like on the stage that had the 2 running targets, what I called the circus stage, the stage 12 that was up on the rifle line. I was like down, I think I was down 0 on the perf and then down 3 on the hip, you know. So, I mean, I had 2 hits, but they were within a hundredth of an inch of bean 2 mics on both of them. I mean, it was nip and tuck. I was afraid I was going to have to argue for 4 hits instead of 4 mics. But those were moving pretty fast. I mean, if I could have slowed them down anymore, I would have. But they put a sail on it and all this stuff. I mean, to increase the wind resistance to try to slow it down, and it was still moving pretty fast.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was a great stage. A lot of fun.
Well, and the thing that I thought when I saw that stage was that I think a lot of IDPA shooters are not expecting that level of complexity, where it's not really the flow maybe wasn't obvious, or you arrive at a shooting position really kind of unaware of which targets you were supposed to engage. And I never had that sense, but I've shot so many stages like that, it didn't really strike me that way. But some of the guys that are maybe just used to shooting local club matches aren't used to that complexity and that many activators and stuff. They were a little bit weirded out by it, but I thought, you know, maybe at a championship match you should expect things to be a little bit higher level than what you see at a club match.
Yeah, you got to amp it up. It was perfect. It wasn't too hard, and the first shooter was a little bit underwater, but after the first shooter, you're like, okay, stationary, moving, here, then here, and I'm done. It wasn't that hard.
Yeah, I mean, I thought afterwards when I was talking to the guys, the Norpoint Club that designed that stage and set it up, I thought about it later, and I was thinking, okay, we've got the barricade from where you shoot is surrounded by green plastic. Then you move to two barrels that are white plastic. What if the targets that you engage from the barricade have green cover around them, and the targets you engage from the barrels had white cover around them? Would that be, too obvious, or would that just be a help for the guys who are a little bit lost, or
you could just flip it and screw with their mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I don't know. It's weird. I look at the stages and I kind of go, okay, it's legal. There's challenges here that maybe not everybody is going to get two, alphas. I was going to say two alphas, down zero. But I just thought, some of these stages are going to be really tough, and some people are going to have a hard time with it. But I didn't hear anybody complaining about it. I've had stages that were difficult where people were bitching about it, but this was more like complaining with a smile, like they understood that it was challenging, that they weren't quite up to the challenge, but they didn't feel like they'd been tricked or anything by it.
Yeah. I've seen people bitch about stages when they're just like a bunch of 30 and 35 yard shots and they just can't hit them.
Yeah.
And then they get pissed and they're mad. And
Now, what do you think about the 35-yard stage? Eight rounds, 35 yards out of, what is that, less out of 100? That was like 5% or something of the rounds.
200 rounds or something.
Yeah, what do you think of that as a throw that in there? Do you think it's necessary or appropriate to have a stage like that?
Oh, absolutely. If anything, you should have had some 20 and 25 and 30-yard targets in there too. I thought
mix them
maybe
up.
Just a little insufficient on the difficulty.
Oh, okay. Now, do you guys generally do long range? You're going to have the 2013 Utah Championship still coming up, right?
Yeah, we got a stage with a half dozen brutal targets from prone.
Oh, good. Okay.
So yeah, we're gonna stretch you out.
Now,
partial hardcover on them.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
And under the new rules, you can only do in a scenario stage, you can only do targets out to 25 yards, right?
Right.
That doesn't mean I can't paint 3/4 of it black.
Well, the thing I was thinking about, our long range stage is essentially, it's the same stage every year with a different scenario. This year we had the bicycle. I thought if you just take the bicycle and the scenario out, it's the same stage, and now it's legal again. And I thought that's kind of a cheap way to do it, but we'll probably do exactly that.
Yeah, there you go. And a funny thing, the Andy Brown scenario, we've shot, almost the same write-up, but, different shooting.
Right.
Just like a year ago, after I think Masada was talking, he did a little redux on the Andy Brown incident. So it was really fun to see that in your match.
Well, I think that's the third time we've run it with the same scenario. We just changed the targets.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we've used like an El Presidente array, we've used the classifier array, and so we try to mix that part of it up. But I always feel like the long range stage and then the other stage that we run on the pistol range, those are, I don't want to say they're just thrown in, but to a certain extent, we feel like there should be a couple little drills in there, and we just get rid of those two stages there without putting a whole lot of time and energy into designing anything that's special. It's just to get those two out of the way so that people can get back to shooting the scenarios. So.
Yep, got to have some skills tests there.
Yeah.
Strong hand, weak hand, some fundamentals.
Now, what do you guys have planned for your match in terms of number of stages and round count? And do you have anything special planned, zip lines or anything? Or
oddly enough, with 13 stages, around 170 rounds, so it'll be nearly identical to the stage count and rounds as Washington. I don't think we have quite as many activated targets and moving.
Yeah, we never.
As you do.
I was living in fear that one would break on each stage, and so we'd end up with like a 9 stage match because stuff would break and we'd have to reshoot everybody or throw them out. And luckily, everything was reliable enough that it ran all weekend.
Yeah,
we have a carnival stage that we've shot a couple variations of a couple times as a running target, and the last time we shot it, it broke down. For about every other shooter, it broke down. And so I've been promised by a couple guys that it's going to be completely redesigned and retooled. Or else we might have a 12-stage match.
Right. Now, do you guys try to run entire stages over the course of the year or elements of them to try to prove them and make sure they don't need too much tweaking over when you get to the state match?
Well, this is our first time in Utah holding a state match with this crew. They had some in 2001, 2002, but that's when I lived in Walla Walla.
Okay.
So I wasn't part of that group that put on those matches. So we're kind of going through the learning curve all over again. A couple of the stages are ones that we've shot 3 and 4 times, but 10 or so of them we've never shot. They're just stages that I asked for stages from the assistant match directors, and I got a few, and I made up a few, and we doctored some from IDPA Nationals from years past and things like that.
Right. Now, how much do you think you've shot Nationals once before or twice, or?
Well, I shot the Worlds in 2011 and Nationals in 2012.
And good or bad, how much do those experiences affect the match that you're going to put on in Utah?
Well, to be honest, lately, now that we have a match on the schedule, I'm paying a lot more attention to actually how to run a match. When I was shooting the Worlds and the Nationals, I was just down there to shoot the match and have fun and then be a good safety officer for everybody else. And I wasn't really thinking about everything that's going on behind the scenes. But it was so that's why it's good to see you guys, and it'll be good to see the Parma boys.
So you're going to shoot you're shooting the Idaho match too?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Never missed that one.
Yeah. So now, how far is it? Is that a drive for you? From you drive?
It's 5.5 hours.
Oh, that's not too bad. Yeah, I mean, I've driven down there twice, and it's like 9 hours from here.
Yeah.
9 kind of boring hours, but
the
one year I had Dwayne Thomas in the car with me, and that provided a little entertainment. So
I'll bet.
Yeah, but so that's not bad. So have you shot the California state match?
I haven't. I don't own any California legal guns.
Well, I was talking to the guys from California, and they were saying that like the mag capacity deal isn't a big deal. I mean, if you're visiting the state, if you take the magazines apart, you're okay.
Yeah, I had a similar conversation with someone. They said, take it apart, put it together at the range, take it apart at the range. And, I've never danced with the devil like that. I've always kept my nose clean.
Yeah.
The law says this, then that's what I do.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I remember reading that even when the New York 7 rounds magazine law passed, that it excluded competitive events. And I can't imagine they're really that thoughtful and caring about IDPA and USPSA that they would write that into the law. But that's what everybody was saying, and I just thought, okay, so I guess I can fly my mags in, and as long as as long as I'm at the range using them, I'm okay, but elsewhere I'm not. I'm not sure how much value that is to somebody who's traveling to a match.
Yeah, I'll probably shoot California someday, but I will definitely buy 10-round mags before I go there. I'm not going to play that game. Even if they do, that's fine. They're comfortable with it. I'm just not.
Yeah, I mean, we have the guys that come down from British Columbia to shoot our USPSA matches.
And they do the same thing.
Yeah, they have a rivet that runs through the mag body tube that limits it to 10. Yeah. So they drill the rivet out, shoot the match, and then put a new rivet in before they go and drive across the border.
They're bringing a riveter and they're like re-riveting the mags.
Yeah. And so that's just part of their gear that they bring with them. And I just thought, well, if that's the deal, that's what you got to do. So
okay, you learn something new every day.
I guess. So so you came to the match. You liked the courses of fire. The organization was good. How'd you like the lunch?
Lunch was good. It was the right amount of food.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I know the Idaho guys are very proud of their lunches. I mean, they're like their advertisement. Come to our match. Here's the number of rounds.
Come to our lunch and we'll shoot a match while you're here.
Yeah. So when you go down
lunch
there,
in the shooting sports.
When you go down there, be sure and tell them you had a good lunch in Washington. That they can't just sit on their laurels. They've got some competition.
Step it up.
I don't know. Their lunch is pretty damn good.
Yeah, it is. It is. I've shot that match twice, and their lunch is pretty good. So I'll give them that. So what else have you seen? I mean, let's say based on the matches that you're seeing or the matches that you're running, what are your concerns, if any, about the new rule book? I mean, how is that going to fundamentally change the way your club runs matches?
I don't think it'll change anything fundamentally. We'll definitely have a big learning curve.
Yeah.
With moving, reloading. Of course, no more moving tack loads or moving reloads with retention, or even moving empty reloads once you reach a position of cover. You have to plant your feet and complete your reload. Right. Much to my chagrin.
So have you formulated in your mind what the definition of move is? I mean, without guidance from above, How are you going to define move? Does that mean move your feet? Does that mean turn your body in the direction that you're planning to go? What's move?
Well, I've seen some proposed language that says something like you can't lift your feet, but you can pivot.
Okay.
But if you lift a foot, and I can't remember if it was the lead foot or the rear foot or something like that, but you can pivot your feet, but you may not slide your feet.
Okay.
So something like that is probably the guideline that we'll use. You can turn, but if you start sliding that front foot forward,
right. I mean, that's going to be
foot off the ground.
Because I'm thinking if I'm leaned out and I'm shooting behind cover, the act of straightening my body up, I'm probably going to reposition my feet, and it's very possibly going to be in the direction that I'm going to go, whether I intend it to do that or not. And so I'm just interested in this idea that if I'm leaned out to the right and the next shooting position is to my left, the act of just straightening my body up is moving in the direction. Assuming I keep my feet static, I guess I'm okay. But just this idea of moving, just leaning one way is moving in that direction.
Yeah, I don't think you can do it based on leaning. I think you got to look at the shooter's feet.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the only consistent way you could call it.
Yeah. That'll be interesting. I mean, I actually, to an extent, I like the idea that the static reload gets rid of the I can't see any threats, so I'm behind cover. I can't run from any one place on the range to any other one place on the range, and as long as I don't see any threats along the way, I'm behind cover. I mean, I never bought into that theory anyway, but that seems to be kind of a prevailing theory of cover.
Yeah, I kind of loved reloading, moving down a hall or moving across a wall, as long as there weren't threats presented to me. I really liked that part of it, and I practiced that a lot. And as a matter of fact, I'd go shoot USPSA matches and do 4 reloads with retention on the move during the match.
Right.
So I had that skill down. Well, it came back to bite me because I did one moving across your window.
See?
Was that stage 13? Because I did that.
I got the finger from one of your overly helpsman marksmen. Let's say that. From one of your very gentlemanly marksman safety officers.
Now, do they have classifications for safety officers now? I missed that. Is that part of the new rule book, or is that part of the old one? There's master safety officers and marksman safety officers?
No, I picked up my share of procedurals, but I earned them.
Yeah, I was by the time Friday morning rolled around, I was so tired, my ankles hurt so bad, I wasn't too concerned about shooting. I had my third reload in the cargo pocket of my pants, and I had the button. I couldn't even just reach in the pocket. The button was still on because I thought, I don't want that sucker to pop out while I'm running around. But then, of course, when it's time to reload, I'm fishing around in my cargo pocket for that reload. So I think I probably had any stage that had more than 12 rounds on it, I probably had a 15-second reload. And so, and after a while, I just thought, I don't really care. I got to the point where I was thinking, my job here is to make sure the stages are going to be able to be run consistently and safely, and there's nowhere in there for me to shoot very well. And after looking at the staff results, we had 40 plus shooters on Friday, and I think I was second or third in terms of fewest points dropped. But the guy who had the best score, I think his time was about half of mine. So I knew I wasn't shooting I wasn't in any hurry, but I was at least pulling the trigger somewhat accurately. Yeah.
It's that 15-second fishing expedition.
Well, and you'd think I would have bought another moon carrier by now, but at the local matches, I rarely ever do more than 2 reloads, And so then when I get to this big match, especially, and it's not so much the minimum round count, it's the required rounds. I'm on a 17-round stage where after I've missed a couple of times and screwed up, it's turned it into a 24-round stage. So I have to do a reload that at a typical club match, it just wouldn't be the difficulty factor, wouldn't require that many reloads. So I was just kind of unprepared in that respect. But it was fun anyway. I had a good time. So
yeah, it's fun. I'll tell you one thing that I found unusual, but in the end, I think I liked it, was your no pictures rule.
The what?
The no pictures rule.
Okay. And what was it about it?
The no video rule. Well, normally we shoot video, half or maybe all the stages, and then we go back and put it together, and we watch each other shoot. And But it is a distraction while you're shooting because you're wondering who's going to hold the camera, where they're going to stand. Oh, I forgot the last stage, darn it. And whereas your match is just like, look, none of this.
Just
and so I was
shoot.
like, okay, camera stays at home.
Yeah.
And I was able to just think about the stages and just absolutely no worries about videoing cameras, pictures.
Yeah, I mean, you've shot some video at matches.
I've shot plenty of video at matches. I try to video every match for content for the show, and it is a big distraction.
Yeah, I mean, I had never worn a camera before we started doing the show. Yeah, but even then, it's a matter of, I'm more concerned sometimes, I feel like, is the camera turned on? You know, is my hat straight? Instead of wondering about where my reloads are going to fall.
Right. Over in the Eastern Washington Sectional Championship, I turn the camera on and it starts beeping because the battery's going dead, and I'm getting the range commands, stand by, beep, beep, beep. And I'm like, all right, focus on shooting, forget about the camera. Yeah. So
that started when we were doing the interview with the guys at K Rounds. They were having a problem with the camera, the lights beeping, and so I'm over in the corner going, battery, Aziz, battery. And they're like going, they picked up on the reference from, True Lies. So it was just a little movie deal, a little moment that, it was a little bonding moment there. It was kind of funny. But I mean, I just find, and of course, it was funny, I was talking to Nils Jonasson after the match about the video thing. And he said that I was surprised that he was familiar with the situation. That he'd come up here and he was aware that the video had been banned and that there was some controversy about it. And he said, "What is the reason that the video's been banned?" And I said, "Well, which of the reasons do you want?"
Because I've heard two reasons.
Well, his was the best one I've ever heard. The rumor that he heard is that we were training mercenaries and that we didn't want anybody to see either who was shooting, what we were shooting, or what we were shooting at. And so I thought, okay, that's pretty good. Maybe we should have like a special award for most creative. That's
better than the two I heard.
So what have you heard?
Well, I heard that there was some issues with. Well, the first one I heard was that there was someone that ended up on a video.
Yeah.
That somebody else shot that got upset about it. They didn't want their picture on YouTube or something.
Okay,
And I heard that some people were doing stupid stuff and had posted it on YouTube, and you guys didn't want any liability associated with, there's houses right next to the range,
right? And
so I guess there was some fear that someone would get a hold of that video and say, "Look what these morons are doing 50 yards from my house. Close the range down."
Those are certainly more reasonable. If people are speculating, that's certainly more reasonable. Yeah, closer to the truth.
You're not gonna hit the hammer.
It is what it is. I mean, it's.
You're big tease, aren't you?
Well, the scene at the end of the Indiana Jones movie where he's wondering where did the relics go, and the government people say we have top people working on it. So he figures this is the business that I'm in. So tell me who it is, and I'll know if they're top people. So like, who's working on it? And they go, top people. And so that's kind of my response is we've had top people looking into it. And we've seen no reason to change our position on it. So that's where we are. And it's been interesting. I mean, we've had some issues with potential sponsors and match sponsors, and they feel like if they're not getting random YouTube videos from the match that don't feature their logo or mention their sponsorship, that they're somehow being shortchanged. But I said, I think we can do a lot more by what media stuff we do. We focus on the sponsors. I think they get a better benefit from it anyway. So,
do you guys have plans to post the official match pictures?
Yeah. Actually, a couple, as the sponsors have called in and said, hey, can you send us some pictures? We've actually put that up front, kind of getting that out ahead of the individual. Because, I mean, the photographer takes couple thousand pictures and he tries to edit them out. Mostly he's editing the pictures are just repetitious or don't have anything interesting going on. He likes the pictures that have muzzled flash and three cases in the air and dirt in the background behind the target. I mean, he likes the good action pictures, so he spends some time editing it. But yeah, he's already released some pictures to the sponsors so they can get stuff out on their blogs and their websites and stuff. So I think that's worthwhile. But yeah, there'll be a link for the shooters to see the pictures that were taken.
The other thing I thought was really cool that I'm going to have to talk to our scorekeeping crew, see if we can do this, was when you posted the kind of the preliminary match results, It just had stage scores alphabetically.
Alphabetical,
not
by name, yeah.
Not totaled and not ranked.
Right.
So you could pull out your yellows and go, yep, stage 1's right, stage 2's right, stage 3's right. But you couldn't say, "Oh, I'm third in SSP Marksman.
Right.
I hope nobody else comes in, ahead of me and I lose my trophy." So
Yeah, and then of course
that was really cool because it kind of kept the suspense up, but it was completely fair because everyone could check their scores and see if they were correct. So
yeah, and I assume that's part of
that.
I assume that's a function in the scoring software that allows you to sort it different ways. And so everybody can see their score, but they can't see the total, and they don't know who they're competing against. And I suspect the guys at the top already know. I mean, some of the guys that were competing against each other in the same class in the same division for the overall wins in the different divisions, I suspect some of those guys are keeping track, and they have a way of knowing, who they're vying with and whatnot. But I like it that way. I mean, I think there should still be an element of surprise at the end. Yeah. At least within the class awards. So.
No, that was perfect. I think we're going to try that.
Good.
We're going to run it. We're going to run practice score at our match, and practice score is working on getting their match results to match the rule book. Right now, they just kind of give you by division, and it just goes first through nth in the division, and it doesn't show. Right now, it doesn't even show classifications.
Oh, okay.
So what you have to do right now with practice scores, you have to do a little post-processing. You take that file, you throw it into Excel, you add the divisions in, then you sort by division classification, and then you're ready to go.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, what I wish our program had, which I don't know what it is, it's the old Beach Bunny, whatever that is, whatever that was called, that it will tell you who the division champion is. But I don't see why it would be difficult for it to run the awards results.
Instead of manually having to comb through.
Yeah, because I get a printout of the match results, and then I go through it and have to make sure. The assumption. Not an assumption, but it isn't that difficult in that I figured the top master is probably the winner for his division. But you could have a situation where you can't just look down the shooters in a given class for anything other than class awards, but I still have to look. You would think it would say, here are the top 1/3 shooters in each division, regardless of class. It would just, and then I could just say, okay, if it told me what class they were in, I could say, okay, this guy's the division champ, this guy's first expert, this guy's first sharpshooter, instead of having to sort through pages, And then you'd think it could also calculate match bumps. It knows how many shooters there were in each class. Why can't it just tell me there's 30 shooters, here's the 3 guys that get a bump, So I think they could do some work with that.
Yep, the scoring software. Well, Beach Bunny and Fourscore had it down pat. It'll be interesting to see the newcomers catch up with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what else? Anything else interesting? Did you have an interesting trip home, or did they question you at the airport? There's a man here with a gun. Did they do that stuff? I've heard all of the interesting stories.
Oh, no more than normal.
Oh, darn it. Okay. Yeah, Lisa Munson was telling a story about one time they asked her to take the firing pin out of her gun. And then she asked them, of course, would you know a firing pin if you saw it? And they're like, no. So what is that?
This is probably a third of the firearms tags I've accumulated.
Yeah.
Wow.
Those souvenirs?
Yeah, I'm well versed with the routine at the airport.
So what's the strangest thing, since you've flown so many times, what's the strangest encounter you've had with people at the counter at TSA?
TSA, it's never strange. It's the counter people that always seem to have strange ideas. Some want the tag in the box with the gun. Some want it on top.
Right.
And I 2 times out of 150, 200 flights, I've actually had people want to inspect the chamber.
Really?
Which is quite unusual, and it hasn't happened for 5 or 6 years. But I've actually had a couple of people say, "Well, show me the chamber." And this is like the counter agent that works for Delta.
Really? Before they.
That's unusual.
That is very unusual. Huh. Yeah, that is unusual. Yeah, the only weirdness I've ever really had that I thought was very strange is when the TSA guy comes out. I think it was at SeaTac. they take the bag and there's a closed door between you and them as they're inspecting it. And then he comes out and he asks, Mr. Brenneman here, yeah. He goes, did you know there was a dead rodent in your suitcase? And I'm, as he can see, my eyes kind of rolling around. He's like, just kidding, So like 2 hours later, we're sitting around and my buddy goes, what you should have said, is the fuse still in it? And I thought, that might have been good for some laughs. But at the time I was just like, okay, I'm not allowed to joke about it, but I guess they are, So that was kind of weird.
That's weird, yeah.
But
be careful with your jokes.
I know. Well, I feel like it's a two-way street, though. So, so we got the new rulebook coming out in October. How many safety officers, certified safety officers, do you have at your club?
I've never actually counted them. I'm not.
So is it like 2 or like 20? I mean, you have a cadre of people
certified, you probably have 10 or 15.
So you're planning to get together as a group and do some kind of a review of the match booklet and how you're going to implement things and things to look out for? Are you going to leave guys to their own devices?
No, we were planning. What we've been doing the last few matches is we've been kind of just having a little 3-minute rules spotlight before the match while everyone's gathered together. Okay, this is cover, this isn't cover. Focus on different things every month.
Right.
And we may continue that. We may try and have a little pizza party or something. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and we're going to have a group, some kind of a get-together in October, September, October, and just kind of go through the stuff. I mean, I was surprised when I took the SOI recertification exam how few of the questions really had anything to do with kind of the match day rules. I mean, there weren't questions. I didn't have to answer many questions about cover, many questions about reloading. It was stuff like
stage design stuff. Or?
I mean, the questions just seemed to be mostly stuff like who will you get your score sheet from? The chief safety officer, the primary safety officer, or the scorekeeping safety officer, and stuff like that. This kind of administrative stuff that I thought, okay, it's in the book, but it's not the stuff that you need to remember or need to know. I would have liked to see more stuff about the rules that changed that on match day will be implemented and penalties will be applied and whatnot if people are in violation of them. And I don't think I got a single one of those.
Weird.
Yeah. What do you do if you encounter this situation?
Yeah. I mean, even stuff like, let's say there's 3 targets that are supposed to be engaged with 2 rounds each. What do you do if the shooter shoots one of them with 8 rounds? Well, 2 years ago you would have had a completely different answer, and there was nothing like that. I mean, what if the shooter is takes 5 steps while he's reloading? I mean, it's just the stuff that I think is kind of the functional aspect of the sport that you need to know off the top of your head. You don't want to refer to the book to it. There wasn't really much of that, and it could just been a crapshoot that the questions that I got were of a certain type. But I would guess 25 of the 100 questions I answered were about this kind of match administration stuff that I thought if that rule changes or not, I don't know that it really has any effect on the sport. How it's how matches are how the rules are enforced on match day. It didn't really seem to have anything to do with that. But it could have just been a random. It was a random 100 questions. So
yeah, I had a couple of those. I was Control F. The SO, the CSO, the SSO, what the hell?
Right, and that's part of the rule book that I was surprised, because that is almost like an appendix, all that stuff. And I would say, as I started in on the test, I'm like going, it seems like all of the questions are coming from this kind of appendix part of the book about match production, and I just thought, how weird is that? I mean, if I need to know the answer to it, I can just look it up.
Those are just the questions you remember because they're the ones you didn't know.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting, too, that I missed 6 questions, and 5 of them were questions that I looked up. So I've got the question in front of me, I've got the rule book in front of me, and I still missed them. So I'm thinking, okay, is this going to become that made me wonder, is this rule, am I just that daft? Or is this rule going to be one that we're going to see some variability in how it's enforced? Because I feel like I can read the English language pretty well.
So the static reloads, are you happy to see that rule come? Are you sad to see it? Are you ambivalent? What's your take on that?
I'm sad that if I've got a long, continuous piece of cover that I can't reload as I move from one end to the other. But I'm glad that if I've got a continuous piece of cover that's 30 feet away from another continuous piece of cover with open ground in between, that people can no longer decide that they're behind cover as they're moving between those two pieces of cover, because just because they're not exposed to any threats. Because I always thought that's like bringing an IPSC theory into a defensive game. If you're in a self-defense situation, you don't know where the targets are. The only reason you know that you can move from here to there and you're behind cover is because you read the procedure and saw the diagram. And I feel like there should still be an element of I'm exposed as I'm moving from here to there.
Well, and also you're looking there and you're not seeing targets, so
right.
Assume you can cover that ground with a round in the pipe.
Well, right, but it's like you move down a hall. There's 3 doorways on either side. As you're moving down the hall, just because you can't see into those doorways doesn't mean there isn't somebody there. And so this idea that because I can't see any threats, I'm behind cover, my feeling is like if you're standing in the middle of a room with a doorway in each wall, just you can't see any threats, but there could be somebody in each doorway that you, in your position, you just can't see them. And they're still threats just because you don't have eyes on them. And so I dislike this idea that I know where the threats are, I know they're stationary, I've found this sweet spot on the range fuller where I can stand and not see any of them, so I'm behind cover. And it just seems to me the whole idea of a cover position suggests that it's a place. You have to go there and be at that place to be behind cover. It's not this idea that I'm standing here and can't see any threats, so I'm behind cover. I never bought into that theory, even though that seems to be the prevailing attitude. And so I feel like the fixed reload means if you're at cover, you have to stay there until your reload is complete. You can't go out hunting with an empty gun, which is the way I look at the prevailing cover definition, or the way people interpret it. They're leaving a fixed place where they have been with an empty gun, and it's okay because they can't see any threats. And I just felt like that's a competition thing rather than a defensive thing.
So I take it you would have preferred to have seen a cover is within arm's length of the wall or something like that, rather than cover extends to infinity.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be some consistency. If somebody had said to me, you have a choice of either cover extends to infinity or covers within arm's length, I would have taken the latter. Because I think the cover extends to infinity. I mean, like you look at it, I never considered the hard cover painted on the target as being cover for me. I considered it cover for him, you know. And so now, if I paint hard cover on the target and the paint covers beyond the center of the down zero zone, I can be anywhere on the range I want, and I'm behind cover, whether I have a wall or not. I'm using his cover as my cover, and I never had that. I never conceptualized that until the new rulebook comes out. And I'm looking at it, I'm like going, I could anywhere on the range I am, I'm behind cover if 50% of the A zone is painted black.
The paint on the target doesn't count.
Says who?
Says me. I've never assumed that it counted.
If we're going on the center of the target as our reference for cover, if you move that black paint over so it covers 51% of the down zero zone, I'm
a piece of cover between you and the target.
There's a piece of cover between me and the target anywhere I go.
It's on the target.
Exactly. He's covered. 50% of him is covered, so I can go wherever I want.
It would be real easy to fix that and just say that the cover doesn't include the paint on the surface of the target.
Well, I hope somebody says that then.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to affect the way we run the matches at our club, but I just look at it as kind of like a loophole that you can drive a truck through. It used to be that I had to cover 50% of me. Now all I have to be concerned about is 50% of the target being covered, and I can engage it from anywhere I want.
Yeah, I think counting the paint on the I think that's a little silly, but...
Well, silly?
Right
Since when was silly a requirement? Not being silly, I don't remember seeing that in the rule book.
That's true.
Yeah. So what else? What do you think like about the... one of the sanest rule changes is the 43 ounce weight limit across the board. I mean, I could never figure out where's this 56 pound or 56 ounce revolver. I weighed my revolver, it weighed 37 ounces, and I don't think there's many revolvers that are much heavier than that. So,
well, I think ESR still can be 50 ounces, but everybody else is 43.
Oh, I thought it was 43 across the board. They left it at 50?
ESR is still, you can have a behemoth.
With a 4-inch barrel, I just don't know, I guess if you had a 4-inch barrel, bull barrel with lead grips, maybe.
Full lug.
Full lug, yeah, might be that heavy. But
that's the most competition-only division in the whole sport anyway.
ESR?
ESR.
Yeah. So did Did you have a pet rule that you wanted to see implemented or not implemented, and you just said yes? That makes me happy.
Probably a pet rule I would have liked to have seen implemented is I would have liked to have seen 10-round major division in the sport, and we didn't get that. So I was pretty heartbroken about that.
Now, did you want to rewrite the rules of a given division, or did you want to add a new one?
Well, my preference would be to combine the revolver divisions into like 2 into 1. You can comply with either of the 2 revolver divisions, but you're just going to be scored together.
Right.
Since their scores run 2 to 3% of each other anyway.
Right.
Let's just form together, increase the participation.
Get a bigger group
division,
of competitors,
and that would reduce the division, which would give us another spot for a 10-round major division. I thought that would have been real nice, but no such luck. Maybe next time. Probably not.
Now, what's your take? I mean, my belief from when I started shooting this, the first time I shot an IDPA match, it wasn't even a match, it was like a side stage at a USPSA match, probably 1998. And I in looking then at the way the divisions were broken out, it seemed pretty obvious that they decided that trigger action was the defining feature that would separate the divisions, because you had single action guns can only be shot here, double action guns here, but will allow, it just seemed to me that trigger action was the defining feature of the divisions. Do you think that was the case then, and should that be the case? Should that be, is power factor, is it capacity? Where should they draw the lines to divide the divisions out to make it level or fair?
Well, they seem to split it up, still not based on action type, but what they did was they took the striker fired guns and they lumped them in with the double action guns. And I know you had talked in the past how you felt it would be better if all the striker fired guns went into ESP.
Right.
And were all bumped out of SSP. But then ESP would have been a huge division.
Right. But huge,
SSP
but
would have
guns
been,
that were all fairly similar.
We'd have had another revolver division almost.
Yeah.
There's like one guy with a SIG and nobody with a Beretta.
Right.
At our matches.
Right. So, but I see these guns that are essentially, the only way in which they're stock is that they don't have a mag well on them. So why are we calling them stock service pistol when they've been tweaked to almost the same extent as all the guns that are in ESP? We've got what amounts to a 3-pound, 2-pound single action trigger in SSP, and then we wonder why there's no third generation Smith & Wessons and Berettas and SIGs in SSP, because you've chased them all out by allowing these highly modified guns in what's called stock service pistol.
Mine was stock. Mine's completely stock.
It seems to me that the 2-pound triggers should all be in one division and the 8-pound triggers in another.
Yeah.
I don't know that we need to protect one division to compare to another, but it just seems strange to me that we've got these highly modified guns in stock service pistol that, you can't have a mag well, and that seems to be about the only difference.